Hi, everyone. Welcome to today's office hours, which the topic is how to set your schedule and training goals. We're so happy that you can join us today to learn a little bit more about this topic. Our own CEO, Dr. Henry Monka, will be leading this discussion for us, and I'll just be helping out a little bit. Henry, can you go to the next slide, please?
Yes, there we go.
Great, thanks. So today we will start with a brief presentation by Henry for about 10 to 15 minutes. Then we will have a live Q&A from you all. If you'd like to ask a question at any time, just kind of hover over that button that says Q&A or that link that says Q&A in your console, and you can type in a question there. We might not get to every single question today because there are more of you than there are of us, but if we don't get to your question, please just give us an email, send us an email at support@brainhq.com, and our great staff will be happy to answer whatever questions you have. You should know that we also have a very robust support site, support.brainhq.com, and there you can find answers to many of your frequently asked questions. But again, if you have a specific question that you can't find there, feel free to reach out and we will get back to you. This session is being recorded so that we can share it with people later, people who weren't able to attend today or people who'd like to review some of the content. And that will be posted on YouTube in a week or two. And be sure to check that out if you'd like to find a link there. We also have all of the past office hours that we've done, as well as a bunch of other great videos on YouTube on our channel. So feel free to check that out. I think that's the housekeeping that we need to take care of today. So I will pass it off to Henry, who will get started.
Super. Thanks so much, Margie. And thanks to everyone who's joining us. What a great way to kick off the year to talk about brain training and BrainHQ. And really the right topic for the beginning of the year is I hope, an interesting one and a straightforward one, which is, hey, how should you set up your schedule and how should you set up your training goals as you kick off the new year and think about brain health? As Margie said, I'm going to spend about 15 minutes of our hour talking about some key concepts, and then we'll go on to take as many questions as we possibly can. So what should your training goals be in BrainHQ? I'm going to talk about two kinds of goals. So first, I'm going to talk about how much you should use BrainHQ. How often should you train and how long should each training session be? And then I'm also going to talk about what you might think of as a performance goal. What should your goals be about how well you want to perform on the exercises and how can that inform how much you want to train? And we'll talk about how to build a schedule that's right for you and how to set reminders so you can achieve it. So let's dive in. So, hey, what does the science tell us, right? How much should a person train on BrainHQ and how often? Well, we normally think about BrainHQ as ramping up over time. If you are here today because you are just starting BrainHQ, maybe you got it as a gift over the holidays, maybe you've just joined us as a New Year brain training resolution, we start off BrainHQ over the first few days in a sort of a gentle, ramped way. All we really want to do over those first few days is introduce you to an exercise, teach you how to do a few new exercises, and learn kind of the basic mechanics of BrainHQ. And this is kind of like, think about starting a physical exercise program, Maybe if you haven't been getting very much exercise, well, the first step is really just getting up off the couch and getting used to walking around your neighborhood a bit more. And if you get accustomed to that and you're enjoying it, well, great. You can work up to your doctor's recommendation of 90 minutes of physical exercise a day, 3 times per week. And BrainHQ is exactly like that. So after those first few days, what BrainHQ is going to ask you to do is to kind of get rolling with your training. Train 3 times a week, maybe 30 minutes a day. And then, of course, as you get accustomed to that and you're doing well and you're making progress, you can up your goal. And we'd love to see people who have the time and have the inclination to really start to train a bit more than that, maybe a couple times a week, 3 to 5 days a week, and maybe upping those training sessions a bit from 30 minutes to as many as 60 minutes a day. But the main point is, just like exercise, it's up to you to with our help, of course, to sort out, hey, what works for you and your schedule and what's getting you towards your goals. And I'll give you 2 quick notes about this. First of all, it's a good idea to train several days a week. Your brain kind of needs that repetitive practice to rewire itself through the science of brain plasticity. So you can't just kind of do it once a month and start to see benefits. You'll need to come back to it more frequently than that, several times a week. And the other important part about it is that, hey, sleep is really important. The reason we suggest that people train for a couple times a week for shorter sessions rather than training all at once is that sleep helps your brain rewire itself and consolidate that learning that BrainHQ is driving over the course of the day. So that's super important. And also, it's okay to train for a while, a few weeks, for a few months, and then take a little break for a while and then come back to training. Exactly like physical exercise. The benefits that you get from BrainHQ don't wear off the moment you stop using BrainHQ. If you get busy with other activities, you take a vacation, you got family in town, fine for all those reasons to take a break for a little while and then come back to BrainHQ and pick up where you left off. So I'll dig more into that as well. So where do these ideas come from? Well, let's just like about everything we do at Posit Science, these recommendations come from the published science of brain training studies. So in a lot of these studies, people trained twice a week for about an hour per session for about 2 hours per week total. In these research studies, there was typically a little bit of setup time and a little bit of wrap-up time in each session. So for BrainHQ, looking to try and get to that, we recommend about 90 minutes of real brain training time per week. But there have been a lot of studies with a lot of different schedules. For example, the Alzheimer's Association right now is running a study where people train 3 times a week for about 30 minutes per session. And we've seen studies that do 4 times a week for 40 minutes a session. We've seen studies that do as much as 5 times a week for 60 minutes a session. That's pretty intense brain training. So what does that tell us? Well, it tells us that brain exercise is like physical exercise. What matters in general is the total amount that you do per week and that you break it up into at least 2 sessions per week. Some people might exercise every day. Some people might exercise twice per week. Some people go walk for an hour. Some people go to the gym and climb the Stairmaster for a really intense 15 minutes. What matters is you get that total amount of training in, and again, that you exercise more than once per week. So there's really no perfect answer for everyone, but the good news about that is that you have the ability to build a schedule that really works for you. And that's what matters, is that you're doing some amount of brain training with BrainHQ over the course of the week and, at least several times as we lay out here. So let's dig a little bit deeper into that question of why you should train several times a week. Let's say you train the BrainHQ like this person. You're on your iPad, maybe you're relaxing in an easy chair. That night you go to sleep. And then the next day you train again, and then you sleep again, and so forth. You're on your laptop, you're on your phone with a night's rest between each session. Well, what's happening in your brain? Well, during the daytime, when you train with BrainHQ drives initial learning and brain change. But then each night, as you sleep, your brain consolidates that learning into lasting brain change. So both parts of that are important, the training you do during the day and then the sleeping you do at night. It might seem like your brain is not doing anything at night, but absolutely your brain's entirely very busy. It's consolidating that learning and making sure that when you come back to BrainHQ in the next day, your brain's even sharper than the day it was before. So another thing, it really is okay to take a break from training from time to time. And like physical exercise, almost everyone has periods where they exercise really regularly. And then, hey, something comes up and we take a break for a few weeks or even a month or two, and then we bounce back to our good habits. Brain training works exactly the same way because BrainHQ drives these long-term changes in the brain through brain plasticity, that brain rewiring that we talk about. Those benefits don't immediately disappear if you take a few weeks off, but you should get back to BrainHQ after your break because the benefits will eventually wear off and you want to keep your brain strong and resilient. So, let's just take a look at an example of this. This is a screenshot of the training calendar in BrainHQ. And if you have seen it before, great. And if you haven't, I'll say a few words about it in a moment. Each of these rows represents a day of the week: Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, and Saturday. And each purple square represents a day where this person trained. Now, this person trained a lot, right? Here's a week where they trained every single day, and certainly they're training every week. But you know what? This is also a great way to do your brain training. This is someone who's training several days a week. So almost every column, we see that they're training. And then, hey, they took a break here, right? Probably got busy again, had some family, took a vacation, and then they came right back to it. And I just want to emphasize that because I wouldn't want anyone to think that just because they stop BrainHQ for a while means it's all over and they should never come back to it. It's perfectly normal. Stop for a little while and then come back to BrainHQ. That's a great way to do brain training. So how much do people train in the real world? Well, our data shows that a typical active user is training 2 or 3 times a week, which is fantastic. Lines right up with the scientific recommendations we just talked about. And our typical users, when they sit down to train about 20 to 30 minutes for each session that they sit down on. Again, great, right in line with those scientific benefits. And what's even better is that the science shows us that, frankly, a kind of moderate amount of BrainHQ training, just 10 to 18 hours of total training over 3 years, actually drives substantial brain health benefits. Now, as we said, you don't want to spread that out too much. I'm not talking about doing 1 hour every other month for 3 years. The brain needs practice to rewire itself, as we've talked about. In these kinds of studies, people typically trained a couple times a week for 2 months, got that brain really wired up, and then they took a break for a while and then kind of came back to refresh themselves from time to time. That is a great way to use BrainHQ, and a lot of people can really stick with it for the long term in that way. So how does this actually work in BrainHQ as a brain training program? So to show that, we're going to swap over to a web browser. And Margie, can you just confirm that you can see my BrainHQ on the screen right now?
I can.
Fantastic. Always nice when the Zoom is working the way we hope that it works.
Absolutely.
So how do you check on this and set it up in BrainHQ? Well, what you should do is go over to your profile. You can click on your name in the upper right of BrainHQ, and I'm on the web right now. So if you're doing this on the web, you can just follow along. You can also do this on mobile devices. It looks a little different, but I'll just demo on the web for right now. And click on your name and go ahead and click on your profile, which, as you may know, is where you can generally update information about yourself. And if you scroll down a little bit, what you're going to see is your weekly goal. So here's the weekly goal right now. And right now it's set up as the default for me, which is 24 levels per week, which is about an hour of brain training per week. And the first question you might ask is 24 levels per week. What does that mean? I want to train for an hour a week. Well, when we built BrainHQ, we initially actually had this system set up in terms of time. People could set up to train half an hour or an hour per week, as they might like to do. But we quickly realized that created a problem. You might have 2 people and each of them are trying to train for an hour a week, but one person is maybe a little faster and the other person likes to take their time a little bit. And what that means is that even though they both train for an hour per week, one person might finish, 30 or 40 levels of brain training in a week, and the other person might only finish 10 or 12. Now, it seems like they're doing the same thing an hour, but the brain's not really doing the same thing, because as a scientist, what we know is that finishing each brain training level in BrainHQ, of course, is what drives that rewiring. And so what we do now is we encourage people to train for a certain number of levels per week. And I'll talk a bit more about those levels in a moment, but you might think about it like going for a run. Most people, when they go for a run, they think, what, I'm going to run for half a mile, or I'm going to run for 2 or 3 miles, or maybe even 5 or 6 if you're a great runner. And we don't usually say, hey, I'm just going to run for half an hour and stop. I don't care how far I got. We usually say, look, I'm going to go out and run a mile and I'm going to make sure I finish that. BrainHQ works exactly the same way. We don't, in the program itself, what we really want to do is get you to finish that mile, or in this case, get you to finish those 24 levels. And if it takes a little longer, that's fine. If it takes a little quicker, that's also fine. We want you to finish those brain training levels because that's what drives brain change. So when you look at this, you'll see 24 levels. And hey, we make a rough guess about how long that's going to take. We know that on the average, it takes people 2.5 minutes to finish a level. But again, your mileage may vary. You might finish a little faster. You might finish a little slower. So finish the levels and treat this hour per week as kind of a rough guide to how much brain training you're going to be doing. Now, if you have done a lot of brain training and you want to increase your goal, you can do it really easily. Just click on Change Goal right here, and you can click this up. Let's say instead of 24 levels, you say, hey, I'm ready to tackle 32 levels or 36 levels per week. BrainHQ will make an estimate about how much time that is per week. But again, it's finishing the levels that matter. And we can go ahead and click, yeah, that sounds good to me. And it's changed our goal right here. Now, what does the changing your goal actually do in BrainHQ in this way? Well, to see that, let's go back by clicking on BrainHQ to our dashboard right here. And what we'll see is that right at the top, it tells us how many levels we need to finish this week. Now, my dashboard says 34 because I've actually done 2 levels already this week. But you can see that what that means is that I'm getting towards my goal that I just set of 36 brain training levels over the course of the week. So every time you log into BrainHQ, it's going to give you this little reminder, how much brain training should you try and finish over the course of the week. Now, how does BrainHQ help you keep track of that? Well, each time you start, you can use the personal trainer, which is this big button right here. And as you may know, that helps BrainHQ pick out the exercises for you. And when I click on that, it's going to take me to this screen. And you can see here the exercises BrainHQ has picked out for me. And I think we have another office hours webinar coming up in the next month or two about the details of tracking this in the personal trainer. But what I want to focus on right now is, hey, how do I know if I'm finishing my levels? Well, every screen in the personal trainer has this nice big circle here. Here we can see this is how I'd start, but you can see the outer ring of the circle is filled in a little bit as a dark ring. Now, what that means is I'm just starting my personal trainer today. I haven't actually done any brain training levels yet, but as I go through the personal trainer, that ring is slowly going to fill in over the course of my brain training session, and it's going to help me track, hey, how close am I to finishing my goal for the number of levels for the day? And to see that, I'm going to swap back to my slides so I don't have to do a full 30 minutes of brain training with you today. And we'll go and see this. Let's see. Perfect. So as you can see right now, we're looking at the personal trainer as I start a session, and I haven't really done very much yet. But then as I start to have finished the first few levels of brain training, you can see that ring start to fill in. This dark circle fills, and you can see I'm making progress towards my goal. And whether your goal is 12 levels per week or 96 levels per week, when you do the personal trainer, just make sure you fill up your circle, and that means you've done the right amount of training today. So as I finish a few more levels, you can see the circle is half full. And then when I'm done for the day, you can see the circle is all the way full in that way. And that means I've done the right number of levels of training today. Now, how many levels of training is that actually? Well, what the personal trainer does is it makes a simple assumption that you're probably going to train 3 times a week. So if your level goal, like I just set in mine, is 36 levels per week, well, BrainHQ is going to divide that in 3, getting 12. And each time I sit down to do the personal trainer, it's going to get me to complete 12 levels. And of course, if I do that each time I sit down and I train 3 times a week, then boom, I've done my 36 levels of brain training per week and I've gotten to my goal. So that's one of the ways that BrainHQ helps you set that goal and stay on target for it. You can just do the personal trainer, watch that circle fill in, and you're good to go. Now, I want to change gears a little bit, and I want to talk about a different kind of goal you might set for yourself in the new year. What we talked about so far was how much training you should do each week and how intensely you should do it. Now I want to talk about a goal that's more like a performance goal. Well, how good should I try and get at these exercises? And BrainHQ has some tools to help you track this as well. So to do that, I'm going to pick a specific exercise. And in fact, I'm going to pick an exercise I've been working on recently, which is called syllable stacks. And if you've done syllable stacks before, that's great. This is an exercise where you hear little short rhyming words and you have to remember them. If you've never seen this exercise before, that's also great. All we're going to do today is talk about tracking progress in the exercise. Now, when I click on syllable stacks, as you can see, I see this nice web page that gives me a lot of information about syllable stacks. Each of these little squares represents a different level in syllable stacks. And again, we have another office hours coming up that talks about how to track the details of your performance on these individual levels. What I want to talk about right now is over here on the left, which is that each of these levels is in a group. Here's 4 of them called stage 1, and here's 6 of them in stage 2. And as you do syllable stacks, you'll work your way through these levels and stages, and you can earn medals as you go. And medals are a great way to set a goal for yourself and achieve that goal. You can see that in syllable stacks, I've done the first 4 levels. They're all filled in with stars and little graphs, and I've earned a silver medal here. And what that means is I've done every level in this stage, and I've gotten at least 3 or 4 stars on every level. You can see this one I've gotten 5 stars, this one 4 stars, this 3 stars. And that's gotten me to this great silver medal here. And it also tells me that I could earn a gold medal if I got 3 more stars. And we can look down and we can see that I've gotten a silver medal here as well. But we can see in stage 3, there's 6 levels here of brain training to do. but I've only done 4 of them so far. I have 2 more to go, and that means I haven't earned a medal yet. And so another great way to set and achieve goals in BrainHQ is to pick some exercises you like and work towards first getting a bronze medal, and then getting a silver medal, and maybe even getting a gold medal in each of these stages. And if you do that, you'll be training in a great way because you'll be working your way through the brain training levels, and you'll be tracking and improving your performance as you go. Now, what kind of medal should you go for? Well, I think for most people, the right answer is to do each of the levels at least a couple times first. That'll get you to a bronze medal. And just work your way through all the levels and see if you can get a bronze medal on each of the stages. You can see that even I have a little ways to go here on this particular exercise, syllable stacks. But another way to do it is to try and get to a gold medal. Now, a gold medal is pretty challenging. You're going to have to get 4 or 5 stars on every level. And we have BrainHQ users who really want that challenge, right? They're top performers in sports, or we work as special forces operators in the military. And for that kind of person, I'd recommend trying to get to that gold level in each of these stages. But for other people, what I recommend is, hey, just go through the levels and work towards that bronze medal. So you've tried each of the levels and seen what it's like. Those bronzes are a great set of achievement. You can keep coming back to the exercises and working towards it. So that's an overview of 2 ways to track your performance in BrainHQ. You can set those level goals and train a certain amount per week. That is a great way to use BrainHQ, just like a physical fitness goal where you say, hey, I'm going to make sure I go out for a walk 3 times a week. I'm going to walk at least 3 miles per week. Use the personal trainer in BrainHQ, close that ring, and you'll be right on target. And of course, the other way I talked about is earning those performance medals if you really want to push your brain and explore the different exercises and levels in BrainHQ. Both of those are great things to do. And the last thing I'll briefly show then is how to set a reminder, right? Maybe you have these great goals, but hey, life gets busy and maybe you just don't always remember to sit down and do BrainHQ. You can go back to your profile exactly as I've just done, and you can scroll down here to set a reminder. Just click this Add a Reminder button. You can say what time you want to get your reminder. I don't really want to get mine at 1 a.m., so I'm going to set this for maybe 8 a.m. We'll get the day started. And you can pick what days you want to get the reminder. Maybe I want to train Tuesday, Thursday, and Friday at 8 a.m. And then you can choose, hey, do I want to get my reminder by email or do I want to get it by text message? You can set your phone number and just click submit. I'll get mine by email. And BrainHQ will send you those reminders there. That's going to help you kick off the new year and do your brain training in exactly the way that suits you. So Margie, I think I've talked enough for a moment. Why don't we take a pause and let's take some questions from people who are interested in understanding how to set and achieve those goals as they kick off the new year.
Sure, let's do that. Okay, so here's one of the questions that we've gotten just today. Let's see. It says, do you recommend a certain time of day to train? Do you ever recommend that people do it right before going to bed, for example?
You know, that's a great question. And I have, I hope, what's a good news answer for everyone, which is the best time of the day is going to be different for each person. And it's going to be the time of the day where, you know, you feel sharpest and you feel like you can focus on brain training. For some people, that's the first thing in the morning, right? I get up, I have breakfast, and I want to do BrainHQ before the chaos of the rest of the day kind of falls on me. And I feel sharp. I've just had a cup of coffee. I'm ready to do it. That's a great time if you're that kind of person. Other people prefer the late afternoon. I want to take a break after maybe I've done a bunch of stuff over the course of the day, do something that's good for myself, do something good for my brain, and I'll do some BrainHQ. And other people, like you say, maybe after dinner and a little bit before bed. You know, what I would focus on is, hey, do you feel like you are sharp and attentive at the time that you do BrainHQ? In our early days, Margie, I remember talking to one of our test users who told me that they were doing BrainHQ while they watched the evening news and had a glass of whiskey. And I remember talking to that person and saying, you know, why don't you do your BrainHQ and then as a reward, watch a little bit of the news and have a glass of whiskey, but maybe don't try and do them at the same time.
Not quite.
And that person went on to be quite successful, I'm happy to say. And so, you know, what that means again is, you know, look into yourself a little bit for where your brain feels right. If I told you that everyone should do BrainHQ first thing in the morning, and that really wouldn't be very good science because every one of us has a different brain and every one of us has a brain that's kind of optimized for performing well at different periods of time. But again, I hope it's a good news story because it means that you can find the time that's right for you. And that is the best time to train your brain and get it ready to do this rewiring and sharpen it up. Great question. Thank you.
Yeah. Here's another question. Can I only use the personal trainer? Is it going to use all the exercises sooner or later, or should I try the explore option?
That's a great question too. The personal trainer will, in fact, eventually hit just about every exercise in BrainHQ. Now, there's 29 exercises in BrainHQ. There's more than 800 levels of brain training. So if you stay at the personal trainer for, several months and you're training pretty reliably several times a week, you will eventually work your way through it. And we have tons of BrainHQ users who've done exactly that. That's a great way to go about it. But for many people, what I like to say is I think the personal trainer is a great way to get started with BrainHQ over the first few weeks or the first month or two. It carefully introduces kind of the most foundational exercises first. It keeps some of the more complicated exercises till the end. So you've had a chance to sharpen up your brain with some really sort of building blocks of brain and cognitive function before you get to the very complex and intense things. But for a lot of people, hey, after they do that for a few weeks or a month or two and they've gotten the hang of it, right? They fundamentally know how a BrainHQ exercise works and they're comfortable with it. They like to go exploring. And I think that's a great thing to do. And if you're that kind of person, I'd make two suggestions as you go about exploring. One suggestion is, hey, pick an exercise or two that you just really enjoy. So in my case, my favorite exercise for a long time was eye for detail. And if you've done that exercise, you see butterflies or leaves flashing around the screen and you have to rapidly move your eyes around the screen to track which ones are which. I just always thought it was a very beautiful exercise. The art team did a fantastic job with it. I really enjoyed it. So when I was picking individual exercises, why not pick something I really enjoy that's good for my brain? And I worked my way through all those levels. Another thing you can do is just explore your curiosity. Pick a few exercises in an area that sounds new to you, right? Maybe you want to try the navigation exercises. Maybe you want to see what people skills are like. And when you pick an exercise, do the first level. Typically the first level is the one that's the most straightforward to kind of get your head around and to dive into and see if it's for you, or frankly, see if it's maybe not for you. That's a good way to explore in BrainHQ. Now, one great thing is the personal trainer, each time you start, it always looks at every exercise you've done and gives you a right schedule for today based on that. So if you go ahead and do a whole lot of, eye for detail like I did, the personal trainer will know about that. And the next time you come back to the personal trainer, it'll either skip eye for detail because you've done it a bunch, or it'll jump you ahead to wherever you are in eye for detail. So it's very easy to go back and forth between picking your own exercises and using the personal trainer that way.
I think that also helps to answer the question someone had about what happens if I get bored with the exercises that are assigned to me in the personal trainer. And I think that what you're saying is feel free to explore something else for a little while before you go back.
That's exactly right. You can always pick something else for a while. And hey, I think we have another webinar again coming up on how to use the personal trainer, but I'll just jump ahead a little bit myself. If you're seeing an exercise you don't like in the personal trainer, you can actually skip it for the day. The personal trainer, I'll just show this real briefly. These are the exercises BrainHQ has picked out for me. But let's say I don't want to do the 12th level of Mindbender, right? I've had enough of it, it's driving me crazy. I just want something else. I can just go ahead and click and start my day on syllable stacks right here. And the personal trainer will just jump ahead right to me. And it's fine to skip some exercises like that. So
Great. Some people have questions about, will they gain benefits if they split their 30 minutes for one day into 2 or 3 shorter sessions?
I think that's perfectly fine, right? What's important is that you get your brain training in. And what if works for you is, hey, 10 minutes in the morning on the phone while I'm standing in line or I'm on hold with customer service, pull out my phone, do some BrainHQ, come back to it in the afternoon on my computer, do 10 or 15 minutes, and then right before dinner or right after dinner, squeeze some more in. That's a great way to train. And one of the reasons I can say that is we're actually running these wonderful partnerships right now with a number of law enforcement agencies that are using BrainHQ to sharpen their cognitive function. And, if you're an officer in a law enforcement agency, you're pretty busy, right? It can be hard to find a half an hour to sit down and do brain training. And that's absolutely how those law enforcement officers do it. They find 10 minutes in the morning, they find 10 minutes after lunch, 15 minutes later on in the day. And we're seeing just great results in those kinds of studies. And you know, Margaret, it reminds me of an article that I just read that was actually talking about physical fitness, but it reminded me so much of how we talk about brain fitness. And this article was saying, look, there's so much really detailed advice about physical fitness, like, hey,
Mhm.
is swimming better than running? Or should I try and run long distances or run really quickly? Or all these kinds of fine details. And the main part of the article was, hey, it absolutely does not matter, right? The single most important thing in physical exercise is, hey, you do some and you pick some that you like. Because the biggest differences are not between, oh, I'm an endurance runner versus I'm a weightlifter. The biggest differences are I'm doing some exercise versus I'm not doing some exercise. And BrainHQ is exactly the same. So if you're wondering, hey, is it okay to split it up a little bit? My answer is going to be absolutely yes, because if that's what helps you do some BrainHQ during the day, as opposed to not doing any BrainHQ today, well, you've done your brain a huge favor and you're doing BrainHQ exactly the way that me and everyone, all the other scientists who designed BrainHQ want you to do it. So
Great.
great question.
And then kind of a little bit of a different question about training schedule is, what is there a benefit to training more than 3 times a week for 30 minutes? What if I want to do kind of more than that? Is
I
there
think
a
it's
maximum?
completely fine. You know, some of the first studies we ran with BrainHQ exercises were pretty intense, actually. People were training 5 times a week. It was a pretty big commitment. And, you know, those studies showed great benefits to memory and attention and people noticing the feeling sharper in the world around them. So that's absolutely right. You know, if I can extend that question, you know, how much is too much? Sometimes
Yeah.
people ask me. And hey, even though I love BrainHQ and I've spent my professional life building it and testing it, yeah, I generally would not recommend that people sit down and do a training session that's longer than 90 minutes and certainly not more than 2 hours, right? And not many people do it, but it comes up every now and then. I once talked to a BrainHQ user who did 10 hours of training in a single day because they really wanted to try and finish their goal.
Wow.
And hey, that's just probably actually not helpful to the brain. The brain, you know, we talked about the importance of sleep. You know, if you do a long session, like 90 minutes or 2 hours, your brain has probably rewired itself during the day as much as it can before you go to sleep that night and really let that settle in. So I don't recommend, you know, super long sessions in that way. You know, beyond that, if you want to train, you know, let's say you like training 20 minutes or 30 minutes, you want to train 5, 6, 7 days a week, I think that all sounds great. You know, in the same way that exercising more times per day is going to give you a faster path to physical fitness, it's certainly true that exercising your brain, you know, several times a week or 4 or 5 or 6, 7 days a week is going to give you that faster path to brain rewiring. But every time I say that, I want to make sure I'm not scaring anyone off who can only has the time for twice a week. You don't want to
Mhm.
train 7 days a week. You want to train twice a week. Hey, be my guest. Like I said, the most important thing is you're training twice a week as opposed to 0 times a week, right? You're giving your brain that healthy dose of brain training in that way.
Makes sense.
Yep.
We have several questions here about, what if you're really bad at a specific exercise? Is that kind of where you should concentrate your work or not?
Yeah. Well, there's so much to say about that, and it is such a good question. Yeah, I recognize that you know everyone does several exercises in BrainHQ, and you might feel really good about one. Like I liked eye for detail, like I talked about, and I scored well. And you might feel like you're doing bad in another, right? Maybe you have another exercise where you're only getting 1 or 2 stars each time you finish a level. I really don't want anyone to feel like they're ever doing bad in BrainHQ. Marty.
Yeah.
You know, all that means is exactly maybe as the person posing the question asked is, hey, this is an area where you can work on your brain some more. It shouldn't make you feel bad. Shouldn't make you feel like your brain's not good at something. Should just be like, hey, I have an opportunity to improve my brain in that way. If I could tell every person who told me they wanted to skip an exercise because they got 1 star, to say, hey, don't worry about getting 1 star. Just do the repetitions. Try and enjoy the exercise for what it's worth. And hey, you're going to get some benefit out of it. That's exactly what I would tell them. That being said, hey, I get that sometimes an exercise is frustrating, right? I was talking to one of our BrainHQ users just a couple days ago who was commenting that there was one exercise she found frustrating. And hey, if you're frustrated, hey, your brain is probably not in the best position to do the kind of rewiring and brain plasticity we're looking for, right? You're going to rewire your brain. It takes attention. It takes reward. And if the exercise is simply not engaging your attention or driving reward because it's too frustrating, well, you might not be getting a lot out of it. And it's
Yeah.
okay to skip it for a few days or several weeks if you're in the personal trainer. You can always email us or call us. We can actually reconfigure your personal trainer to get it out for a while if that's what you'd like. But the only thing I'd suggest is before you do that, just take a look kind of inside your own mind, if I can ask it that way, and say, hey, can I just reconfigure how I think about this so I don't feel bad about getting 1 or 2 stars? I'm just, keep working at it, enjoy the exercise for what it's worth, and recognize that, hey, I'm training on something that I need some work on. So, if you can reframe it that way, and then the exercise is going to be helpful for sure.
Yeah, for sure. We have quite a few questions on the difference between training on the computer or on a phone. Like some people say the phone seems kind of small. Is there a better benefit from using one rather than the other?
Again, a great question. And, I'll start off, and you're going to hear me say this probably several times today, Margie, which is, hey, the most important thing is to do some training at all as compared to no training, right? If I was talking to someone who was thinking about, going for a walk today, and they were telling me, oh, I don't know, I'm in San Francisco, right? It's kind of foggy out today. Is my walk still going to help me? Well, it's still better than not walking at all, isn't it? So, be a good idea to get out there. But to the question, we like to have BrainHQ on a computer with a nice big screen, on a tablet with a pretty big screen, but we also like to have it on the phone because a lot of people just have their phone, and you can pull out your phone and do some BrainHQ training at a time where you might otherwise skip it. So in that sense, hey, you're doing the training and that's good for you. I was personally really surprised when we built and tested some of the visual exercises and used them on the phone the first time around.
Mhm.
Some of them, of course, are designed to challenge your peripheral vision. And, I would have thought, well, maybe this exercise is just going to be super easy on the phone because it just doesn't reach into my peripheral vision. And, the interesting thing about it is most of those exercises are still quite challenging, actually, on the phone. And the good news is that because BrainHQ is adaptive, even if it is a little bit easier on the phone, well, BrainHQ is going to make it a little bit harder for you, isn't it? And in that sense, it's still going to be challenging your brain's performance, still going to be driving that rewiring, and still going to be helpful. So, what I always recommend is, hey, people should do BrainHQ on the platform that they find most convenient and the platform that lets them do the most training, right? So, if you're lying around on the couch and you're thinking about scrolling Instagram and you got your phone in front of you, well, pull out BrainHQ and do 10 minutes of BrainHQ. That's going to be good for your brain. And if you did it on your phone that day because you couldn't, make it over to your computer, fantastic. You did something good for your brain, and that's good for you. So I wouldn't want anyone to think that they're, not getting benefit out of these exercises on the phone because for sure they are in this way. Now, that being said, there's something really nice about, oh, actually, I should say one other thing. The interesting thing that our science team learned about this as well is that, people tend to sit different distances from their screens, depending on how big their screen is. I'm sitting on a laptop. I'm on this call on a laptop right now. I'm probably about a foot and a half away from it. If it was at my desk where I have a nice big screen monitor, well, I'd be further back from my desk, wouldn't I? And if I was talking to you on a phone, Margie, I'd probably have the phone right up in front of my face like this. So even though the screen is smaller, there's almost this intuitive thing that people do that they position themselves far enough away from the screen that it kind of occupies the same amount of space, no matter how big the screen is. And so, hey, if you're doing these visual exercises on your phone, you probably have them nice and close to your face, and you're actually occupying quite a lot of visual space in that way. So it seems like it ends up working out. Great
Yeah, I
question.
think that point that you made about how the program kind of really works to get you to a level where you're challenged is really important. And that also is what it's always aiming to do. You're not actually supposed to get 100% correct on every level, because your brain doesn't change when things are too easy for you, just like it doesn't when things are too hard. So
That's exactly right. I've talked to people who thought they were like tricking the system because they maybe sit a little bit further back or something like that. I'm like, hey, do whatever works for you. BrainHQ is going to get you to a level where you're getting about, 3 or 4 out of these right out of every, 4 or 5 that you do, right? You're going to get about 3/4 or 80% of them right. So do whatever tricks you like. BrainHQ is going to make it harder or easier for you as it needs to drive to that level of performance. And that's because we know that that level of performance is really what drives brain change. You got to get some wrong to change your brain.
Yeah,
Sometimes people come to me and they're like, oh, I got every single one right. Well, I guess that
great.
feels good, but I'm not really sure you rewired your brain at all. Your brain probably finished and said, well, why would I change myself? I did just great. So I think getting some of them, wrong again, if I can use that word, is in fact really important for driving brain change.
So here's a question about the performance goals and medals that you were talking about. They say, as I progress and say they earn a silver medal, but they want to go for gold, can they redo that level or do they have to go on to the next level?
Oh, that is a great question. I mean, let me go back to my screen here for just a moment, if I may. And let's go back to syllable stacks. So, for example, on this first stage of syllable stacks, you can see I've got a silver medal and it says 3 stars to gold. You know, I've done all of these levels at least once. They're all filled in. Again, you can see a level that you haven't done because it has this kind of empty circle in it. But if I want to get those 3 more stars, well, gosh, I only got 3 stars on this level. I can just click on it, and that's going to help me redo syllable stacks. I won't do it right now, but you get the idea. And hey, this time maybe I'll get 4 stars, or maybe I'll get 5 stars. That'll add to my, total number of stars that I see there and get me towards this medal. So for example, on this level of syllable stacks, I earned 3 stars the first few times I did it. If I can get that to 5 stars, well, then I'll have increased my total number of stars shown here, and that's going to get me towards that gold medal. So that's exactly the right way to do this. I'm glad you asked. The whole idea of the medals is to kind of give you a reason to train on these levels, to repeat them a few more times, try and increase your score. That's going to get you towards the medal. But hey, that's the sneaky thing our scientists and our designers have done to get you to train more. It is good to practice on the levels over and over again. That's what drives change in the brain, just like practicing a musical instrument or practicing a new language. Repeating those things trains the brain, makes you better at it. That's what drives brain change. That's what gets you to the medal. Those things are all beautifully lined up.
Yeah, and I just want to point out that each of those little squares there, you could just click on. If you see 3 stars there and you want to do that one because you want to try to get 4 stars, you can just click on that and it'll take you right to that level.
That's exactly right. That's exactly right. And earning those stars will then get you up to that medal.
A couple of people have asked, is there a way to adjust the difficulty level on exercises you find very difficult so that you feel a little less frustrated?
Uh, I mean, the short answer is yes. Just get a few wrong and don't worry about it. So, the BrainHQ exercises are adaptive. If you get it right, as you know, it will get more challenging for you. If you get it wrong, it will actually back off and get easier. And so what I tell everyone is, hey, don't feel bad about getting them wrong. And in fact, you can use getting them wrong in your favor, right? If you feel like, hey, this exercise has just gotten to the point where I can't keep up, it's overwhelming me, this is just too hard. Hey, just get some wrong on purpose. That is completely fine. BrainHQ will back off its level of difficulty right down to a level where you can feel comfortable. And then, hey, start doing your best and working up again in that way. Again, if I really could just try and release that bad feeling people have from getting one quote wrong and just think, okay, my brain needs to back off a little here. BrainHQ is going to back off. That's completely fine. So, a great example of that is, maybe just as we were talking about earlier, you've done a bunch of BrainHQ and then you took a couple of weeks off for whatever reason, and now you've come back. Maybe you come back and the first level of BrainHQ, you're like, wow, I guess it was great. I could do that 3 weeks ago, but that seems a bit much for me right now, having just gotten back from my vacation. Don't worry about it. Get 5 or 6 of them wrong in a row. You have my permission as a person who helped build these exercises. Get 5 or 6 of them wrong, get 10 or 12 of them wrong. Just let it back up to a level that you feel great about, and then start your training right from there. That is completely fine. Great question.
Great.
And it's a great way to do BrainHQ.
All right. Here's a good question. Each category, like attention and brain speed, has a list of exercises beneath it. Are all of these equal, or is there a progression of difficulty?
Oh, that is a great question. Let me just show on my screen what this person is asking about. You know, if you start at your dashboard, like I said, most people train by kicking off with the personal trainer. That's how BrainHQ picks the exercises. But you can see all the exercises here by clicking Explore All Exercises. And as this person is saying, they're grouped into attention and brain speed and memory and people skills and intelligence, by which we really mean decision making and navigation. And I think the person is asking, hey, are these in order, right? Is target tracker the simplest exercise because it shows up first? And is optic flow the most complicated exercise? And they kind of ascend like that. And the short answer is a little bit, but not too much. I think it's fair to say that in each of these categories, we've tried to put the most straightforward exercise to learn first. So if you want to try a single exercise, you know, trying right turn is probably an easier way to start than trying optic flow. That's absolutely the case. But if you're working them through like this, you know, I wouldn't recommend you just do them kind of purely one by one in that sense. You know, for example, mixed signals is actually a pretty complex exercise. That's why it's towards the right on attention. But Hawkeye, even though it's in the brain speed group, which is next after attention, is a much easier exercise to learn than mixed signals. So maybe I should step back and say they are, you know, a little bit in that order of difficulty. If you're looking at them, the ones towards the top are generally easier to learn than the ones towards the bottom, and the one towards the left are generally easier than the ones toward the right. But there's no reason not to explore and just see if something's good for you or not. I don't know. Did I
Yeah,
answer that question, Margie, or should we take a different swing at
no,
it?
you did. I also think that we should maybe comment on the fact that, the reason that attention and brain speed are the first two
Mhm.
categories is because we really see them as foundational. Those skills help you improve with the later categories. Isn't that right?
That's exactly right. That's exactly right. The reason we do show attention and speed and memory up first is exactly as you say, these really are foundational. These are like the building blocks, right? You really do want to have, you know, reasonably good attention and speed and memory, because if you're going to tackle a more complex exercise, like let's say optic flow or let's say card shark, you know, you're going to want to have that foundation of attention and speed and memory in place before you tackle those more complex exercises. That's a very fair way to put it.
We have a couple questions here about, people saying they wear hearing aids or they're colorblind, and how do they set their schedule?
Oh, well, that is a great question. Well, let's tackle each one of those in turn. So, you know, if you have hearing aids, first of all, good for you. People who use hearing aids have better hearing, of course, but we also now know that if you have hearing loss and you don't use hearing aids, you do increase your risk for going on to dementia, right? The brain needs that high quality hearing information coming in through the years to stay healthy, and hearing aids can help with that. So if you're using hearing aids, I recommend you do BrainHQ with the hearing aid in, right? It's going to help you do BrainHQ a little bit better. And frankly, it's going to help train your brain to take better use of that hearing aid, right? Your brain's getting kind of better information in from the hearing aid. You might as well have it in place as you're doing BrainHQ. Now, that being said, when I talk to people doing BrainHQ with hearing aids, there's kind of two paths. In general, the best path is, hey, go ahead and use BrainHQ. And if you're hitting auditory exercises and, you know, maybe you're scoring a little bit lower, you're getting 2 stars instead of maybe you're used to getting 3 or 4 stars, that's okay, right? You want to train your brain's hearing if you have a hearing aid. That will help keep your brain healthy, help make your hearing sharper. That's all great. As we talked about, I don't want anyone to feel bad if they're getting a lower number of stars on one exercise than another. In your case, if you use a hearing aid and you get a lower number of stars on sound sweeps or auditory ACE or one of those exercises, just means your brain needs its hearing systems tuned up and you're doing it. Good for you. But I do talk to some number of users sometime who tell me, look, I have a hearing aid and I just, you know, I can't hear the sound sweeps in sound sweeps. And so what am I supposed to do? I'm just stuck. And if that's the case with you, then what I would generally suggest is, hey, we can configure your personal trainer to give you visual exercises only. And that can be a good option if your hearing is really to the level where you just simply can't do the auditory exercises. Hey, I want you to do some BrainHQ and not none. So we'll just set up your focus so that you're focusing on visual exercises. Same way a little bit with visual issues. So with color blindness, I can say that hey, some of the visual exercises can be more challenging, but they all absolutely can be done by people who have color blindness. Sometimes we get questions about Hawkeye, which is an exercise where, of course, you're seeing birds of different shapes and colors. Let's see if I can just show this real quickly. Here's this level of Hawkeye, and we have to distinguish between these two birds. This one is redder and this one is whiter. And if you're colorblind, some of the colors, of course, are going to be more confusable to you. But in every level of Hawkeye, we had a vision scientist design and review this. You can still tell the difference between the birds based on other colors or based on how bright they are and various things like that. And again, maybe that means you're going to get 2 or 3 stars on Hawkeye on this level rather than 4 or 5 stars because you have color blindness, but that's okay. You are still exercising the visual parts of your brain, still rewiring your brain to make it faster, still rewiring your brain to have it take the best advantage of the visual information that's coming in from your eyes. So I think these visual exercises are great for people in those kinds of situations. And again, like we were talking about earlier, Margie, just want to release people from feeling like, hey, I got 1 or 2 stars and I'm bad, and that means I shouldn't do this exercise. Hey, it's a little more challenging. BrainHQ will slow down and make it easier for you. You might earn 1 or 2 stars instead of 4 or 5. That's great. You're training your brain and making it more healthy in exactly the way we want you to.
We have a couple people asking, what if you feel like you have more serious memory issues and you really want to focus on that? And I wondered if this was a good time to talk about how you can change your focus on your personal trainer.
Yeah, that is a great question. Let me say a couple things about this because it's such an interesting question. Someone asked earlier about these different categories of exercises, attention, speed, and memory, and so forth. And hey, we grouped them that way because, well, there's 29 exercises, BrainHQ. They needed some grouping. And it's absolutely true that these exercises emphasize these cognitive skills more or less, right? The exercises in the memory group, they more explicitly challenge your memory. But hey, every exercise involves attention. Every exercise involves speed. Most exercises involve memory, way, shape, or another. And what that means is, hey, if you're worried about your memory, you want to sharpen it, I actually wouldn't recommend doing only the memory exercises. In the studies that we did that showed that BrainHQ training worked, people did a mix of the attention, the speed, and the memory exercises. And that mix is what drove those very nice improvements in memory that we saw in studies that we did with Mayo Clinic and the University of Southern California, for example. And that's because, the brain doesn't have a single memory box inside of it, and it doesn't have a single attention box. It doesn't have a single speed box. All those things are deeply interrelated with a lot of wiring and connections across the brain. And if you want to improve your memory, well, you need to sharpen up your speed and make sure you can focus and pay attention, and then work on some memory exercises. And all of that will come together to make the brain healthier and to improve people's memory. And that's actually the reason we built the personal trainer, so that when you do the personal trainer in its default mode, it actually, as you were talking about a moment ago, works us through those foundational speed, attention, and memory exercises so that a person gets those benefits. Now, that being said, if you want to hammer away on memory, absolutely fine. And as you indicated, Margie, one of the best ways to do that is to go to the personal trainer, and then you can actually set a focus by clicking this focus button here in the upper left. And when I do that, you can see there's all of these pre-configured focuses that will make the personal trainer pick certain exercises. So for example, let's say you're that person who, I don't know, maybe you have, maybe you're completely deaf, right? And you cannot and do not want to do the BrainHQ auditory exercises. Fantastic. You can pick this focus on visual processing focus, and you're only going to get visual exercises in BrainHQ. Let's say you really want to work on those memory exercises. You just want to focus on that. You can click on the focus on memory here. And then when you go back to your personal trainer, it's just going to pick out memory exercises for you. And you can work on that for a few weeks and really kind of push those memory skills. That's a great way to do it. So in that sense, yeah, we kind of give you the power to kind of pick your exercises and still use them in the personal trainer. And if you ever want any help setting up your personal trainer, just go ahead and email us at support@brainhq.com. You're happy to hear kind of what your goals are, and one of our wonderful customer delight agents will go ahead and configure your personal trainer so you get what you want. Great question. Thank you.
We have a couple of questions that are just on basic navigation. So asking, they saw the page with the medals and the individual levels. How did you get there?
Oh, that is a great question. Let me start at the beginning. So when you first log into BrainHQ, you're always going to see this page. We call it the dashboard. As a reminder, it's going to tell you how much more training you should do this week, 34 levels. Always going to have that personal trainer button, big, easy button, very easy to start the personal trainer if you want BrainHQ to pick out the exercises for you. But also on this page, there's this button called Explore All Exercises. And that does, well, exactly what it says. When I click here, it's going to take me to this screen, and it's going to show me all the exercises in BrainHQ. I can scroll through them. I can read a little bit about them, and then any exercise I want to do from here. Let's say I sit down and I'm like, you know what? I want to try out this juggle factor exercise. I just go ahead and click on it. And it's going to take me to the juggle factor page. I can read some more about the exercise. And if I click on this arrow up here, it's going to take me to all of the levels in juggle factor. And you can see I've done all of these levels. But this is a great way to start exploring the exercises if that's what you're in the mood for.
This is an interesting question. Can you train with others at the same time with different logins on different devices?
Well, I think the answer is yes. The way BrainHQ works is that each person has to have their own account. And that's because each person has their own brain. And as we've talked about, BrainHQ adapts to you. So Margie, if you and I were sharing a phone and I did a bunch of BrainHQ training and then I passed my phone to you, that's not quite optimal because, you might be better at some exercises and need some more challenge on others, and it's already adapted to me. But if I pass my phone to you and I log out of BrainHQ and then you log into your own BrainHQ account, well, BrainHQ is going to be set up exactly for you in the way you like it, and you can go ahead and train. So in that sense, let's say you have an iPad in your house that you share between, you and your spouse. As long as you have your own BrainHQ account and your spouse has their own BrainHQ account, you can pass that iPad back and forth. Just make sure you're logged in as you when you're training, and make sure your spouse is logged in as themselves when they're training, and everyone's going to get the right optimized brain training for themselves.
Right.
Does that answer the question, you think, Margie? I think I
think
got the
so.
right idea there, but
And someone has asked, what happens when a person has done all the exercises and levels after doing BrainHQ for a long time? Does
that's a
it
great
restart from the
question.
beginning?
And, we do have more and more users who, have done the personal trainer and they've worked their way through every single level. Like I said, there's 29 exercises, there's 800 individual levels. Most people do each level several times in the personal trainer because it brings them back to get them better. But we do have lots of people who over time, they've worked their way through all those 800 levels. And that's great. The good news is you absolutely can and should keep going. And there's two ways to do that. First of all, you can continue going with the personal trainer. It will actually bring you back to the levels that you haven't seen in the longest time to kind of refresh them, so to speak. If you're one of those high intensity trainers, you've done all 800 levels, hey, you might be a year or 2 years into BrainHQ. Maybe that very first level is 2 years ago in your rearview mirror, right? BrainHQ will bring that back to you to make sure that you're keeping up your performance on that. And in fact, if you go to this progress tab, and I'm only going to say a bit about this because I think, again, we have a whole nother office hours coming up on tracking progress. But if you go to your progress tab and you're tracking your calendar and your BrainHQ in this way, looks like I'm having a little bit of a hard time loading this, probably because I'm on the Zoom. But your BrainHQ, which is a score that shows how much you've kind of built your brain reserve, is going to keep growing or keep plateauing and show you that you're training right and keeping yourself steady over time. On the other hand, once you've done all the levels, a great thing to do is to come back and explore these exercises, and you can find areas that you want to fill in for a little bit. So for example, here's eye for detail, one of my favorite exercises, as I mentioned. And you can see I've come back and I've actually worked pretty hard to try and get 5 stars on most of these levels. But I haven't really done that all the way yet. Like here's this level in eye for detail I've only gotten 3 stars on. I can come back and pick this exercise and, hey, just train on this one for a while and try and boost my score. I think of this a little bit like, you get bubble paper sometimes in the mail, and it's nice feels good to pop those bubbles. I come back in here and I like to fill in the areas to try and get this to a gold medal, for example. And that's a great way to keep training. Once you've done every level in BrainHQ, come back and optimize your performance across them. Super.
Great. We have just a minute left. But I think this is an interesting question. With the personal trainer, how does BrainHQ assess weaknesses and how do they prompt certain exercises over others?
Well, that's a great question. So each time when you start the personal trainer, BrainHQ looks across all the exercises and all the levels and kind of picks them out for you today. And what it generally tries to do is it tries to work through the exercises in a step-by-step way, kind of like we talked about a moment ago. Some of them are a little easier to start with, and some of them we want to push off till later, till your brain is kind of tuned up before you tackle them. And then each level in the personal trainer, what it does is lets you train on it, and it'll keep letting you practice on that level until you've earned a total of 10 stars during the day. So maybe the first time you do that level, you get 3 stars, and then the second time you get 4 stars, and then the next time you get 4 stars. Well, that's a total of more than 10 stars. So it finishes with that level for the day and it goes away. And then the next day when you come back, it'll bring that level back to you if it thinks you can do better, or it'll retire that level for a while. If it thinks, hey, you did pretty well, I want to advance you to the next level. So in that sense, it brings you back to the stuff that it feels like, hey, you did okay, but you could do better. And for the stuff that you've done well enough, it retires it and brings something new onto you. There's a ton more to say about that. I think we do have an office hours coming up soon on the topic of the personal trainer, and we'll dig more into that.
Do. That's in a couple of months.
Great question.
All right. Well, our time is up, and I just want to thank everyone for coming and for sharing your questions. I hope that we were able to answer at least some of them. Again, if you have a question, please feel free to just send it to support@brainhq.com, and our team will get back to you with an answer. And that's about it. I think we look forward to seeing you in our next webinar.
That's exactly right. I think we have one in February coming up, a Brain Health Academy from my colleague, Dr. Tom Van Vliet. And
That's
then
right.
you and I and Stephanie will be back in March for the next office hours. So
That's
look
right.
forward to it. I'm glad so many people came and joined us today to talk about kicking off their new year with BrainHQ and achieving their brain training goals. I'm just delighted. So to all of you, wish you a happy new year and happy brain training. Thanks.
Yep. Thanks.